Welcome to NFL Daily, where we've got a little Thursday night football from Lucas Oil Stadium. You know, a game wasn't played, but we had football players doing things that matter for the NFL. Yes, it feels like we're back on a night recap. I got Nick Shook, who was in the stadium the whole day, and he's made it back to his hotel room where he's broadcasting from a tiny microphone that we ordered on Amazon 24 hours ago so he could join us. Thank you, Nick Shook.
Thank you for getting that sent here. Poorly lit in this hotel room, but we're making it happen.
Yeah, I'm really excited. Let's just recap this day. Later in the show, also, I'm going to play a conversation I had with Nate Tice looking ahead to the next 3 days, who we're kind of looking at throughout the rest of the combine. But, you know, we've already got results to talk about. Shooky, by the way, like what is it like there in the stadium? Like what are you like a stopwatch guy? What are you doing there for 7 hours?
I'm not a stopwatch guy. I go off the official results. I sit up in the suite. What I really do is watch the drills and take notes on every rep of every player because it allows me to filter through, and then some guys pop over time. You know, Tristan Wirfs pops over time. Cam Jurgens pops just visually with the eye test being there and seeing all the reps. And I'm taking notes and I'm putting together the all-combine team. And if you go back in history, I've nailed some guys that people weren't paying attention to. So check it out when it comes out next week.
Yeah, I love all-combine team is one of the best pieces of content we do on NFL.com all year. One of the signature Shook pieces. Well, then you should get going. I mean, it'd be silly if I did. Let's hear it. Like, give me a standout to start with.
All right, so tonight was defensive linemen, edge rushers, and linebackers. And I felt, as many have said about this draft class, the depth is in the defensive line and specifically the defensive tackle. We didn't get a lot of the guys that you've heard their names because they weren't participating. You had the two guys from Michigan. You had Walter Nolan from Ole Miss. None of those guys participated, so we had to find some other guys. And we found some other guys. My honorable mentions list for this group is like 9 players long because I had a really hard time choosing between them. But the two guys I chose that will end up on the all-combine team, number one, CJ West from Indiana, who had a really good testing session. He ran a 4.95 40 with a 1.73 second 10-yard split, which is very good at 316 pounds. He jumped 33 inches. The guy's kind of an athletic freak. And then he ran through his drills and just looked powerful within his framework. He was controlled. He was strong. I really liked what I saw, and I could see him making a difference at the next level. And the other guy in that group, Tyleik Williams from Ohio State, which as somebody who follows Ohio State passionately is a lifelong Ohio State fan, I knew that he was going to come here and make a difference. I just needed it to be proven to me, and he did it in every single drill. He had the best workout, I think, of any interior defensive lineman out there. Just every rep of every drill, you just saw it over and over again. And eventually my notes, they go from like great rep, fantastic rep, this is why it was good, that type of thing as I'm typing them along. I get halfway through and I'm like, God, Tyleik's the real deal. This is exactly what I saw from him in college, and he's crushing it. I think he did a fantastic job tonight.
Yeah, you mentioned with West there, he was only the 8th or 9th player ever at his weight to run that fast, a 40 under 5 seconds. And this is why I love having you there. You're in the stadium because, you know, you could do the relative athletic scores, and we will talk about that. That's all really important. That's what the combine's all about. But you're watching all the drills. I really like that. Where do you think these two guys, if they help themselves, might fit in? Because you're right. A lot of the biggest names, it was kind of a story at every position, didn't work out today. Darius Alexander did at the defensive tackle position, had a fast 10-yard split. Don't think he hurt himself at all today. Had a solid day. But where do you think these two guys might fit in?
Yeah, that's usually where I struggle because, the draft is kind of a crapshoot. But I think about teams that need help stopping the run and need help in the interior. And one of the first teams that came to mind, even if you look at their roster-wise, they do have a lot of pending free agents, is the Bengals, because they got a lot weaker up front there with the losses that they had last offseason.
Round-wise, what do you think, too?
I think Lance had him going as high as 31st. A lot of people have him in the second round. I could see him sneaking into the back end of the first round. There are going to be a lot of interior linemen that go in front of him, the guys I just mentioned before, so it might be kind of hard to crack that. But if anything, he's a day 2 guy. West is the one where I'm going to have a hard time putting my finger on because he played at Kent State prior to Indiana. Go Flashes, alma mater, baby. But at the same time, I think that there could be a little bit of skepticism, even though he tested really well today. So I think he's a round 2-3 guy at the top. He's not a round 1 guy, and could end up being later. But I really liked his workout.
Yeah, I was texting with someone about him, and they said he's a classic okay, let's go back and watch a little more tape.
Yes, exactly.
After this, that he grabbed our attention. All right, we've already spent 4 minutes and we haven't gotten to Shemar Stewart. I know you're starting like the way that the day actually started with defensive tackles, but to me, this is one of those. Shemar Stewart blew up the combine. One of those combine performances from top to bottom. The Texas A&M project, 6'5", 267 pounds. He goes absolutely crazy in terms of his 10-yard split. His vertical leap goes 40 inches, 131 for the broad jump.
Yeah.
You line it all up, and he basically had Myles Garrett's workout. I mentioned the relative athletic score, which is something that's out there that they do great work. Math Bomb on Blue Sky, check them out. Of 1,802 defensive ends to work out at the combine since 1987, he came in third. I think it was Mario Williams and Myles Garrett that are the top two. So that says a lot. What was like seeing that in person? What do you think about him also as a player after you talk about the workout?
Well, that's the funny thing is that a lot of the testing is done off to the side while the other drills are going on. So you might catch a vert, but your focus isn't on it unless you just happen to look up and see it out there in the distance or you hear the crowd pop. You see the 40. And in the stadium, it's quiet when they're running the 40s. And every once in a while, somebody rips off a time that makes everybody go ooh and ah. And he was one of them. But the downside is he doesn't do the drills. So it just ends right there. And you're left wondering, okay. And that's really the combine process for me. Obviously, you have your measurables, and that helps you compare to past prospects and project how well they could play at the next level. But for me, I need to marry that with the drills. And so when I don't see a guy on the field doing the drills, it feels like an incomplete review. Testing off the charts, matching historically, sounds like he's got a significant potential. But now you have to go back and look at the tape because you didn't see the drills, right? Of course, everybody's going to go back.
And the tape wasn't good. I mean,
exactly.
He has 4.5 sacks. Depending on who you talk to, you can see the promise there, but he definitely didn't show the sort of explosion. And it's the type of draft prospect that we end up talking a lot about. So this will be our first Shemar Stewart conversation. Again, 158, 10-yard split, which is just outrageous
Bonkers.
At his size. It's crazy in a 4.59 40. 4.5 sacks doesn't tell the whole story. Talking to more people, like the tape isn't great. He looks like a guy who just doesn't know really how to play football yet. And there's been guys like this. Rashawn Gary is one. Obviously, Travon Walker a couple of years ago is in that category. But the ones I've spoken to and people that I trust too, like his tape's rougher, that he has even more to go. So it is going to be an incredible projection. But Jeremiah had him in his top 25 coming into this week. I think he was 21st. That's already expecting him to test well, but now, you got Booger McFarland saying he might go number 1 overall, and people thinking, okay, this might get him into the top 10. So he'll be a fascinating conversation where he's just crazy athletic, which you saw today, but the tape doesn't really match up. Can you be patient enough? I don't know if you have a gut feeling on him off the bat, or you got to wait.
Well, I mean, if you want to comp with the Mario Williams career, Mario Williams was the shocking pick that went ahead of Reggie Bush when everybody thought Reggie Bush was a slam dunk in that draft. And over the course of his career, he had a solid career, but he never quite lived up to the initial expectation that comes with being a number 1 overall pick. It's hard to hold another player to that standard of that expectation. And I also think that the
Myles Garrett,
situation
that was pretty good.
Yeah, and the situation at Texas A&M, it's hard to evaluate because they had so much turnover. He ends his career with Mike Elko as the head coach. Prior was Jimbo Fisher. It was a program that had just across the board not lived up to expectation. They put together legendary recruiting classes and did not produce. So I don't want to hold that much against him. Having said that, spending a top 5 pick on a player with that potential athletically, but the lack of proof on tape is a massive risk. So it's going to take somebody with the big stones to go up there and do that if they feel that confidently about him. This is also why we have pro days and everything else. So the process is not done.
Yeah, tonight we'll just focus on the combine stuff. Although I will say, if Mario Williams went 7th, that was a good pick. He had a good career.
Yeah,
he was a good player.
Just first in that draft.
He just was a bold. It was just a bold number 1 overall pick. For instance, Travon Walker is not on pace to have as good a career nearly as Mario Williams.
And when compared with Aiden Hutchinson, it wasn't a great pick.
Give me another standout.
All right, so we're going to go away from the defensive interior since we already did that. We'll go to edge. Interesting group because a lot of different archetypes. James Pearce laid it down with a 4.47 40. That immediately grabbed the attention. 1.56 split. And that's kind of what put him on everybody's radar. A little uneven in the drills, I will say. Started well, handled the bag drill well. Wave drill, not as good. You get into some of the later stuff, and you're like, okay, I can see it. I can see it as a guy who is going to be an edge rusher, who has the athleticism to drop back in coverage occasionally. If you're going to disguise blitzes, that type of thing, send a sim pressure, that sort of thing. But when it came to athleticism and body control, he passed the flying colors, in my opinion. He looked like the guy that, fits in there. The comp is going to be hard because he doesn't quite fit body-wise to some of the guys that, like, a lot of people are probably going to compare to Brian Burns. He's not quite as long as him, but if you're looking for a similar archetype, I guess that's your fit. But he's somebody who definitely stood out to me. He'll end up on the team as well. And then Landon Jackson, who's a lot different, but the tape, really, I love the tape. His physicality, the way he's able to...
From Arkansas.
Yes, from Arkansas, who he's able to play through blocks, make tackles, that type of thing. I thought he crushed it. Athleticism on full display, fluid, smooth in motion, just looked like a natural in a lot of these drills. I'm really excited to see what happens with his career just because he's somebody who got on my radar with his drills tonight. And I would love to see if he lands in the right spot, if he can make a difference.
Well, it's funny because the drills more correlate to the football. And Pearce is similar, I think, to Shemar Stewart. And I think there's a lot of guys in this draft where a lot of mock draft love, a lot of good measurable stuff, not necessarily great tape. You hear some frustration from Pearce that you're expecting this explosiveness and it doesn't totally show up on tape. His vertical actually was bad. It was 31 inches, like it was straight up bad. So that's interesting because most of the other numbers, and you said the drills look good too, most of the other numbers were great and he was still on the higher end of the relative athletic score, but not as crazy, complete an athlete as Landon Jackson, for instance.
And not as complete a workout on the field either.
Really? Okay. Yeah. And the vertical for Landon Jackson actually was even higher than Shemar Stewart. He went 40.5 inches, which is just crazy for a guy that big. Kind of seen as like a second round type of pick, but helped himself today. Give me someone else that you liked out there today.
All right, we'll move to linebackers. Actually, you know what? We'll stay on edge real quick because there was a guy who almost made my team, and I had to end up putting him in honorable mentions. Okay. David Walker from Central Arkansas.
Okay.
Central Arkansas. So this guy, lower ceiling in terms of pure physical ability and potential. Like, you can see the limitations and why he ended up at a Central Arkansas instead of like a major, Power 4 school. But at the same time, he went through every drill with polish of a guy who's played a lot of football and understands his body and how to use it. It wasn't until like his last rep that he even made a mistake. Every other drill prior was just like a fundamentally sound, very controlled rep where I just kept writing in my notes as I went through the list. I was like, God, there's another good rep of him. God, there's another good rep of him. Like, he's, like I said, lower ceiling player in terms of physical potential, but just was so sound that he landed on my radar. I had a ton of honorable mentions with this group as well. I thought Jordan Birch from Oregon had a pretty good day. Jack Sawyer, for the most part, had a very good day. You can tell very much that he is the edge guy that he played at Ohio State.
One note on him, though, he was in the 3rd percentile for his arm length, which it's arm length, but I forget who the other comps were, but they only found like 2 players that even had reasonable NFL careers with that short arm. So that's it's funny, and it's a theme of this draft. If you're just starting to catch up, and I'm including myself in that, there are so many different opinions on all these guys. Jack Sawyer is a guy who some people have close to the 1st round. Other people will think he's a day 3 prospect.
I wouldn't spend a 1st round pick on him.
Right. No, but I'm saying like some people think like he's barely draftable. I think some of these guys we're talking about, Pearce, Shemar Stewart, there's going to be huge ranges of guys. Before we leave the linemen, I did want to mention Donovan Ezeraku of Boston College, because I think he was a guy that came in, people wondering how the athleticism would be, because his tape is quite good, and he really seemed to check off boxes, was in the 80th percentile for relative athletic score. And so he's someone where it's like maybe there's questions because the tape is good, and he showed that he's a good enough.
His drills were good too. He was in my honorable mentions. I wanted to fit him in there as well. It wasn't great, 100% consistent, but you could see it.
That's great. And Derek Harmon, the interior guy from Oregon, only ran the 40, kind of a borderline first rounder, but he did run the 40 fast. And then Princely Umamayan. What do you think about him?
Him and Harmon actually had similar workouts when it came to the drills, because there were reps where you're like, oh, it's there. Like I totally see it there, but it was just inconsistent. It was sloppy reps here and there. It was stumbles. It was just a lack of like control in some of these situations that you want to see in these on-field drills. So I left a little bit of an uneven feeling about both of them, but I see the upside, especially with Princely when it comes to the physical traits.
Yeah, he looked like a little stiff, but a big vertical, a big broad, and a guy who looks like he could be a real pass rusher, like a situational. I mean, he's got some juice on tape, and so I was curious how he would do. All right, let's get to the linebackers. I think I know where you're going with at least one of your off-ball linebackers.
It's a weird group. Looking back last year, we had Edge Cooper in that group, and like he was one of those guys that you compare it with the tape and you could see it in the workout where I was like, he's going to make a difference, and he did.
Yeah.
That guy didn't really exist in this group. The best guy I found,
I'm surprised.
The best guy I found was Jihaad Campbell from Alabama. I thought he ran a 4.52, 10.7 broad jump. And he lived up to the reputation of guys who rely on speed, athleticism to make their plays. He also was a guy who played different spots because Alabama was so deep at edge with guys like Dallas Turner. So he's got experience doing both, which is interesting to me because I think it's valuable as we see the edge defender kind of morph into this ambiguous do both things type of role, and how he could fit into teams that might need to address both positions, because he looked really good in coverage. He had soft hands. He looked like a natural back there.
Yeah, man.
But he's also a guy who has experience, playing edge. In fact, he stuck around after everybody was done and did an extra bag drill as an edge rusher just to kind of show the scouts, look, I'm capable of this as well. So he had the best workout of that group, but a lot of these linebackers were really hard to separate. I felt like I was watching a lot of the same reps from a lot of these guys.
Okay, but that's why we got shook in the building to tell us Jihaad Campbell's staying late and he's doing the edge rush. From my vantage point on the couch watching on TV, I thought he had a great day.
Yeah.
And because maybe it's a position where he's so clearly the best off-ball linebacker, I mean, his athletic numbers were pretty crazy for his weight to run a 4.52, and all the other athletic testing scores were 85, 90%, and he has really good tape. Man, I know teams don't want to draft 3-down linebackers too early, so he's a first-round pick. We'll see how high he goes, but the fact that he's so clearly the best at his position this year probably is going to help him. And so to me, he felt like one of the biggest winners from my vantage point.
Because I have to do team fits and stuff with this. And the first team I thought about was the Browns, because they may not have JOK again based on his neck issue. And if you need a guy who can kind of be a rusher, but also is rangy and athletic to cover a lot of space like JOK has done for the Browns, that's like the perfect fit. It's just that where they're picking and what they need, he's not going to be there. DJ's got him as his 12th best prospect in top 50 right now. And I totally saw why.
Okay, I love that. LSU's Braden Swinson, by the way, in edge rusher. I just thought I like the way he was moving around. I mean, I'm no scout, but I think
he landed in some of my notes. It's funny because like a lot of these guys, it's kind of varying on notes. And then Campbell was like halfway through, I was like, okay, he's definitely making the team. Like he's definitely going to be on the list. Now I need to figure out the rest of these guys. And a lot of them, like Swinson, like I have one here where he's like decent rep drop ball. There was another player out there, last name Scourton, who was going like 1,000,000 miles an hour, just completely out of control in a couple of the drills and had to kind of tone it down. But it's funny because some of those guys were just kind of up and down. It was a little bit hard to separate a lot of this group.
Okay, so there's a bunch of the winners. We don't need to do losers from the combine. I guess the combine slightly was a loser because of all these guys who are now not testing. Some had injuries, some just said it was a personal decision. Jalen Walker, for instance, who's looking like he could be anywhere from pick 2 to, he could be top 10. More of an edge rusher, but also would have worked out with the off-ball linebackers. Like he didn't work out. Mike Green, Michael Williams from Georgia, a lot of high potential picks did not work out. And then I guess Abdul Carter, kind of, a downside the last 24 hours, we find out that he's got a stress reaction. And his agent, Drew Rosenhaus, says he's not planning to undergo surgery, that he will work out at his pro day. And Rosenhaus even said, I'm confident he's going to go number 1. I'm like, wow, how is these meetings going with the Titans? I don't know, because he was the odds-on favorite to go number 1, but it's just a little, not what you want, obviously, during Combine Week for the potential number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, and the stress reaction in the foot, that concerns me. I think about, like, past players who dealt with foot issues. I think about like Sammy Watkins and his foot issues. Like it's something that I feel like you want to get taken care of now, as opposed to, letting it, all right, well, we're just going to move on without it. It's not causing me any pain. Well, what if it gets worse? And then that causes concern with teams and your draft stock falls. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
you want to do that pro day. That's the thing, is he wants to put up some big numbers.
Well, especially because he's coming off that shoulder injury that was plaguing him throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, and then maybe you get it after that, but that's just something we'll be tracking throughout the process. Drew Rosenhaus, by the way, big winner on NFL Daily, because he stopped me outside of St. Elmo's and said he appreciated the 101 list, and so that's gonna stick with me.
Look at that, feather in Gregg's cap.
There we go. Before we go, just a couple little, not even little. Usually would be leading the show with this. A couple items from the rest of the league. The Chiefs plan to use the franchise tag on Trey Smith. That was according to Ian Rappaport. I am curious. They did tag and trade L'Jarius Sneed last year, so
Gregg,
it's possible.
Give me my flowers. We did it on the tag primer. I told you they got to tag him. They can't let him leave.
Yeah, there's differing opinions, and you were right. And
so far,
Trey Smith, number 2 on my top 101, he will not make it to free agency. Neither will T. Higgins, who's number 1. That's usually how these things go. And then look, Matthew Stafford, I'd put him number 1 if he was just a free agent. That's how much quarterbacks matter. Lot going on in the Stafford world. Dueling reports since we've last taped. Ian Rappaport put it out there, following up on a report. It was originally from Jordan Schultz that Tom Brady, the minority owner of the Raiders, met with Stafford at this Montana ski resort. Some disagreement, which was hashed out at a Starbucks. You guys probably know about. We're team rap sheet here. Team rap sheet all the way.
Yeah, we are.
Who was it? Danny O'Neill put out the nickname for Schultz, Air Jordan, but ERR, just based on the reporting. Hated the reporting from that man during the Deshaun Watson whole thing. Just a lot of rough stuff. Yeah. But anyways, either way, these guys are meeting. The Raiders are really pushing. I thought it was interesting. Vic Taffer from The Athletic also said the Raiders aren't interested in Darnold at all, which might inform how interested they are in Stafford. So this thing is moving forward to the point where you're like, wow, like something's going to happen. But at the 11th hour here, we hear from Rap Sheet and a couple other places too with similar, and Pete Schrager too with a similar reporting that McVay and Stafford have talked over the last 24 hours, and don't count out the Rams from getting this done and maybe the leverage of it all, and maybe they meet in the middle. To me, it feels, Nick, and I'll end my long rant here, that it's Raiders or Rams. I'd be kind of stunned if the Giants end up getting this thing done, and it's kind of gonna be up to Stafford on some level, right?
Yeah, and I had this conversation with some people last night. The fit doesn't make sense for the Raiders unless you're Tom Brady, because Tom Brady knows one speed, which is win, and I want to win now. But like, if you look at that franchise, they're not just a quarterback away, and you acquire Matt Stafford when you're a quarterback away. Can the quarterback change the picture dramatically? Absolutely. Look at Jaden Daniels in Washington, but it doesn't feel like a slam dunk. That makes all the sense in the world type of fit, yet the pursuit is very strong, and it sounds like we're close to that potentially happening. I also thought when all this started that this was a bit of a staring contest between Stafford and the Rams. How far are we going to go before we figure things out, hash it out, and stay together? Also, the Rams don't have a backup plan, and they're in a much better position to contend right now. Why would you just let him go via trade or via that sort of situation than keep him? It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, and yet here we are.
I think the backup plan is Aaron Rodgers and or Jimmy Garoppolo for what it's worth.
That's frightening.
Yeah. It's really fascinating. I agree, and yet it's not just Stafford. It's Pete Carroll and Stafford,
yes,
and a better front office. So they would be trying to win right away, and we've seen teams turn things around fast. You gave a perfect example in the Commanders. Now, are you competing for a Super Bowl like the Rams could potentially do? No, probably not. But you could be winning games, and I think that's an attractive option.
But are you also winning yourself out of a draft position for your successor? Like, there could be long-term ramifications. I guess this is what you tied yourself to when you hired Pete Carroll, though.
So I think the decision for Stafford, and we'll see, will be something to the effect of, how much money less do I take to play for the Rams?
Yep.
Like, basically, if I'm getting 60 from the Raiders and 40 from the Rams, I'm probably going, like that's too big of a gap to make up. I'm going to do this thing with the Raiders. If it's 53 for the Raiders and I can get the Rams to go up to 45 and guarantee some money into year 2, maybe that's close enough for me and both sides are happy. We will see. Poor Eric, he's got to take care of his infant son, and we're going to be on Stafford Emergency Podcast Watch. Nick Shook, thank you very much. You will be on the coverage on NFL.com, doing this all combine team, taking notes in the stadium all weekend. Good luck to you, and stay healthy.
The marathon has only begun, and I hope that I don't have to get on another plane with the flu like I did when I left New Orleans.